I think young people are hungry. They are hungry for a positive, hopeful vision, and a vision that they can be a part of shaping. Let's empower young people. Let's put young people in decision-making roles. That's how you get young people involved, is you give them the space, the place, and the power to be able to make decisions and be involved.
Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to the Zero Hunger Project podcast. I'm your host, Sumen.
I'm Stacia.
And today, the topic we're going to talk about is food sovereignty in action, building community resilience from the ground up. And who do we have as a
Oh, I'm
guest?
very excited. This afternoon, we're talking to Mike Schreiner, who's a bold leader and tireless advocate for climate action, sustainability, and social equity. As leader of the Green Party of Ontario and the first ever Green MPP elected to Ontario's legislature, Mike has reshaped the conversation around environmental policy and progressive governance in the province. Mike's vision is grounded in practical, community based solutions. A longtime champion of local food systems, he's played a pivotal role in connecting sustainable agriculture with public policy. His entrepreneurial background, having founded multiple environmentally focused businesses, gives him a unique lens on building a green economy that works for people and the planet. Since entering the legislature, Mike has been a leading voice on housing affordability, clean energy, Indigenous reconciliation, and protecting Ontario's vital watershed and farmland. His commitment to evidence based policymaking and respectful, solutions focused dialogue has earned him wide respect across party lines. In the legislature and beyond, Mike is known for his authenticity, integrity, and unwavering commitment to a better future for all Ontarians. We're very, very happy to have you here.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to join you. And that was a very kind and long
Right?
introduction. But you left one thing out, that I've known Suman Roy for 20 years, working in the local food space. So I'm happy to join you.
Yes, I've been very fortunate to work with Mike for more than 20 years, probably,
That's
from the
awesome.
local food plus days.
That's amazing. I wanted to jump right in and ask you what you think, Mike, is the biggest misconception about food insecurity in Canada today.
Yeah, I think there are two big misconceptions. So the first is that everyone experiencing hunger are experiencing homelessness at the same time.
Hmm.
But actually, the number of people who go to food banks who are unhoused is a very small percentage. Almost 75, 80% of the people who have to access food banks to get through the month are renters people who pay rent. About 10% actually own their own homes. So the number of people having to access food banks to be able to feed themselves and their family through each month is much larger than the unhoused population. And then the second one is that the only people who are going hungry are people on social assistance. And while the vast majority of people, especially here in Ontario, who have to access food banks in order to meet their basic dietary needs, are people who are on Ontario disability support payments, where somebody's being forced to live on $1,300 a month. And if you think of average market rent in Ontario is around $2,000 a month, that math doesn't add up.
No.
The vast majority are on ODSP or Ontario Works, where people are expected to somehow get through the month on $731 a month, which that math even doesn't work even more. But you're starting to see in the fastest growing part of our population who are having to access food banks. So about a quarter of food bank users are people who are employed, and their primary income is employment income. And you're also seeing a growing number of seniors on fixed income. So like, Canadian Pension Plan, for example, having to access food banks. And I think a lot of that is driven by the affordability crisis, especially the housing affordability crisis. I mean, young people, for example, in Ontario can't even imagine owning a home. But if you think about it, there is no place in Ontario where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford average monthly rent. And so when people have to choose between putting food on the table or a roof over their head, they oftentimes pay the rent first, which is totally understandable because you don't want to be kicked out of your housing, lose your housing, become unhoused, because that creates so much other instability in your life. And so oftentimes people go hungry. And that's why you're seeing such skyrocketing food bank use in Ontario and across the country.
I wanted to say two things about that. First of all, it makes sense about the seniors because they're the largest population in human history, right? And they're all aging at the same time. And so there are a lot of problems that are coming because of the boomers and the aging boomer population. And we had a guest on very early on in our podcast that talked about if Toronto were to shut down, right? Like if access to stores and whatnot were to shut down, that the average person would be able to last 4 days in their house with the food that they have.
That is Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we also know, and Suman and I talked about this, years ago, back when I was the local food dude in Ontario with Local Food Plus, that really we only have most grocery stores only have about 3 days worth of food if our borders shut down and the whole supply chain shut down. So there is a lot of precarity in our food distribution and systems.
And you look at northern or communities like St. John's, Newfoundland, or Newfoundland, Labrador communities, that number is even less. I remember when I used to live there, and on a Sunday, if there was a storm and the ship didn't come in, Sunday going into a grocery store was empty shelves.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much money you have, you still can't afford if there's no food.
And also the quality of the food that, like, to go back to the point that you were making about, do I pay my rent or do I buy groceries? You need to come up with the thing that costs the most money, right? So your money has to go towards the immutable truth of your rent needing to get paid. Versus I can go find, with the change I found in my laundry and in the couch, I can go find something that's quote unquote food. It's not food, but it will feed me right for the next little while. And so that's part of the problem, is that it comes with malnourishment.
100%. A couple of years ago in Scarborough, we did a survey of our clients, and we realized that after paying rent and utilities on minimum wage, you have little over $2 left per day. Even to get that minimum wage job, if you got to take the transit to go, it's $6.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, you can't even get to work really unless you get into debt. So it is a big challenge. There's no question.
It's a huge challenge. Hunger really is an income issue. And, we're not going to solve this crisis that we're seeing if people don't have adequate incomes to be able to pay the rent or for housing and still have money left over to be able to purchase, healthy, nutritious local food.
I was about to say, how are you going to fix it, Mike? What's your plan?
So you know what? Actually, before I say how I would fix it, I just want to say that hunger is a policy choice.
Yes.
And it's a policy choice that governments have made. And, you look at it when it comes to housing. In 1995, both the federal government and the provincial government in Ontario, and I'm going to focus on Ontario because I am the leader of the Ontario Green Party and in the Ontario legislature, both the federal and provincial government stopped putting money into deeply affordable nonprofit co-op and social housing.
Wait, I need you to say that again for the people at the back.
Yeah. In 1995, the Ontario government and the federal government stopped putting money into deeply affordable nonprofit co-op and social housing. So we have had 30 years of almost zero investment in deeply affordable housing in Canada. As a result, 93% of the deeply affordable homes in the province of Ontario were built before 1995. So no wonder we have a housing crisis. No wonder there is no place in Ontario where a minimum wage worker working full-time can afford average monthly rent, or that we have over 81,000 people in the province of Ontario experiencing homelessness right now. That is a policy choice. The federal government now seems to be saying that they're going to get back into supporting housing with the latest announcement we've seen from the Carney government. But Doug Ford's response to that was, no way is Ontario going to do this. And so until the provincial government steps up, we're not going to solve this problem. So that's number one. Number two.
I'm not sure I can handle much more, Mike, but okay. Let me have it.
It gets worse. I hate to tell you this. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse.
I can't.
So in the 1995, we also, under the Harris government, cut social assistance rates by, was it 32%? So right now, we are legislating poverty in the province of Ontario. If you are a person with disabilities living on Ontario disability support, you are required to somehow get by on $1,300 a month. So think of all, just you can't even pay rent for $1,300 a month, let alone buy food or, have even just basic necessities. Plus, people with disabilities oftentimes have additional healthcare, transportation related costs that able-bodied people don't have. People on Ontario Works, many of whom probably should be on Ontario Disability Support, are forced to live on $731 a month. Like, the math does not add up.
We need to start calling people, like right now. Take your phone out, Mike.
And then the third one is
No, there can't be a third one. I can't. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about this. I'm really sorry. So the third one is nowhere is our minimum wage in Ontario a living wage.
No.
Right.
And so even if you're a full-time minimum wage worker, you can't make enough money to make ends meet. So that's a policy choice. So what I would do is I would say the provincial and federal governments have to get back into building deeply affordable nonprofit co-ops social housing, as well as permanent supportive housing with wraparound mental health and addictions and other supports for people who are, in a crisis situation. We have to, at a minimum, double social assistance rates immediately. And we have to get social assistance rates up to what would be a level of a basic income. And then the third thing is we're going to have to raise the minimum wage. So a full-time minimum wage worker can actually pay the rent and buy groceries. And so those are all policy choices. And I would argue they're moral choices. Because
Yes.
I think we are morally failing our neighbors, our fellow citizens, our fellow Ontarians and Canadians by not having a system that ensures there's a basic floor for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, we're supposed to be a province and a country that has a social safety net, right? There's this tacit understanding that we're here sort of to look after each other. And that's kind of the foundation of the fabric of our country. And the fact that this is mandated, provincially and federally mandated, is devastating.
It is.
Yeah.
Mike, you've been in this trenches a lot more than I have. Do you know any other territories or provinces in Canada who's doing a better job than Ontario is?
When it comes to per capita spending for everything, healthcare, education, post-secondary education, social services, etc., Ontario's dead last. Like, we're last.
Right.
So we're the worst. It's like so sad that we're the worst. Now, there are differences within specific programs. So some provinces do a better job of, maybe investing in housing or income supports. Ontario's better in some than others. But on average, when it comes to per capita government spending to support people, Ontario's last.
Okay. I'm going to ask the obvious question for people for whom this conversation is not commonplace. Why is it so deeply unappealing for the provincial government and the federal government to a certain extent to do anything to help Ontarians? I don't understand why that is so distasteful to them.
Well, I can tell you, as the first MPP in the Ontario legislature to call for the immediate doubling of social assistance rates, I was told by numerous people that, why would you do that politically? None of those folks are going to vote for you because they don't vote. And I was like, well, I don't care if they vote or don't vote. I'm going to do the right thing for the people of Ontario. I'm going to stand up and speak out for what's morally right and to speak up for the kind of caring communities and province that I want to live in, and I think most Ontarians want to live in. And what I find so infuriating about this, and I'm going to try not to get too partisan political here, but
go ahead. I invite you.
When Doug Ford makes decisions like removing the $120 license sticker fee for drivers to renew their license plates, that cost over $2 billion in the first year. It primarily benefited middle and upper income households, especially upper income households who could own more cars. And it's costing us about $1.5 to $2 billion each and every year. When the premier decided just prior to the most recent provincial election to send a $200 check to everyone, including millionaires and billionaires. That cost over $2 billion. So, you can literally find billions of dollars in tax giveaways that nobody was asking for. Like literally nobody was asking for. I was the only MPP in the entire legislature who voted against the whole license sticker gimmick back in 2022 because I said at the time that that's money that should be going to building affordable homes or increasing social assistance rates so we don't force people to live in legislated poverty. And I want to say to folks who are not in that situation, you're affected by that situation, by people who are being forced to live on such low incomes, because those folks have to access emergency services more often, police, fire, paramedics. They are in and out of our emergency departments more often, costing our healthcare system money. Oftentimes they're in and out of our criminal justice system more often, costing money. It would be far cheaper, just from a purely, if your only thing is like financial self-interest, and mine is bigger than that, but if that is what your primary concern is, it would be far cheaper to care for people than to actually have to police people and respond to the crises and costs associated to our healthcare system and other social services in our communities.
And not for nothing, but those people who are so-called not going to vote for you, so why would you help them anyway, are so deeply disenfranchised that they have stopped voting because for them, it means virtually nothing. If you were to actually help them, you would embolden an entire section of the population to exercise their vote because they felt like they were being seen and heard by their representatives. I mean, the myopic delusion that's involved in a rationale like that is jaw-dropping to me. And if I had your job, I'd get fired. I get fired.
Well, I can tell you anecdotally, I've heard that, at least in my riding here in Guelph, that a disproportionately higher number of people experiencing homelessness, for example, are having to access food banks or our mission actually voted in the last provincial election. A lot of that credit though goes to organizations in our community who care deeply about empowering everybody, who ensured that people who are experiencing homelessness, for example, could get on the voter roll and vote, because oftentimes they don't have an address for their voter card to be sent to. Oftentimes folks don't have access to their ID to even be able to prove that they're eligible to vote. And so to have organizations in the community to help people be able to vote, empower them to vote. And I'd like to think have an MPP who's going to, listen and be a voice for them in the legislature makes a difference.
100%.
Yeah.
Brings me to the next one, Mike. And so Green Party of Ontario, you have 2 MPPs, right? Including you. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes. And Ashland Clancy.
Yeah. And so with 2 MPPs, what difference do you think you or the Green Party can actually make to make the needle move?
I think we used our bully pulpit, if you want to put it that way, our ability to be on podcasts like this, or to scrum in the legislature, debate at Queen's Park, be in the media studio, to punch well above our 2-seat weight, and be a strong voice in Ontario. And I'm going to give you 2 concrete examples. So the first one is in the 2022 provincial election. The Ontario Greens, and I was the only Green at that time, that was before Ashland Clancy was elected, we were the first party to call for an immediate doubling of care disability support payments and Ontario work, social assistance rates. The NDP changed their platform in real time during the election and matched our commitment. Then the Liberals said, we have to follow suit. And they said, we're going to raise them like 20, 30%. And then even Doug Ford had to get in on the game and say, we're going to raise them 5%. So we saw in real time how a party, even at that time with only 1 seat in the legislature, can move the needle on the policy conversation. I think we're also doing it on housing. We're the first party that called for legalizing multiplexes and mid-rises to help increase housing supply and build homes that people can afford in the communities they know and love, to call for the government getting back into providing government-assisted, deeply affordable homes. And so, that moves the needle. And so I think it's important to have that voice in the legislature.
That's badass, first of all. And also, I'm not above shaming people into doing the right thing, right? No, there's no but. That was a full sentence.
Okay, I'm like, are you going to say something more? What is the but?
I just think that, standing up there with the small but mighty contingency from the Green Party and suggesting things, then all of a sudden everybody else is like, oh, darn, we should be doing that also. Right? I mean,
Yeah, totally. And I think when we often say that, and we have talked about it in our previous episodes,
yeah,
as a layman or what a small influence, what can I do to change the world?
yeah,
This is, I think, a concrete example
yeah,
of what Mike and Mike's team is doing or has done, that just one or two MPPs in that massive legislation, but actually moving the needle. So
yeah.
kudos.
Can I give you one other example?
Absolutely.
That is on the other side of food security. So we've been talking a lot about, I think, which is the immediate crisis of food security, which is just people going hungry because they don't have adequate income to pay the rent, put food on the table. But another component of food security is ensuring that we can grow enough food in Ontario to feed our population.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is protecting farmland.
Yes.
And so I'm really proud that right now I'm collaborating with independent MPP Bobby Ann Brady, who everyone knows was a longtime conservative, but now sits as an independent. The two of us have put forward a bill to create a farmer-led task force to create a food belt to permanently protect farmland in Ontario, because we're losing 319 acres of farmland each and every day in this province. That's the equivalent of 9 family farms every single week. So at a time when you have somebody like the Orange Man south of the border threatening our sovereignty, our security, our trade, our economy, it is so important that we protect our farmland and the $52 billion that the agri-food sector contributes to our economy. The 1 in 9 jobs is the largest employer in the province, over 880,000 people working in the agri-food sector, especially when you consider, think of how big Ontario is. Only 5% of our land is suitable for growing food, and less than 1%, 0.5% is prime farmland. We have to protect it, because if we pave over it, we lose it forever, and we're not going to actually be able to grow food to feed our population.
I don't know how to process this much information about all of the things that appear to be going to hell in a handcart, Mike. How do you get up in the morning and be like, oh boy, I get to do this all over again today? Like that. And also, how did you get here? Like, what did you do before this? If you've known Suman for 20 years, what were you doing before how'd you get into politics?
Well, Stacey, I'm going to answer your first question about how do I get up in the morning? I get up in the morning because, well, first of all, the people of Guelph have given me the confidence to vote for me and to be their voice and their advocate at Queen's Park. But I get confidence from people all over the province. Like right now, our food belt bill has been endorsed by every major farm organization. Municipal councils are now, Hamilton being the first, passing resolutions in support of it. We're getting people on the left, right, center, nowhere on the political spectrum getting behind this bill because they recognize how important it is to protect farmland. I've done a ton of work with a number of anti-poverty organizations to advocate for doubling a social assistance rate. So there are so many good people in Ontario who are trying to do the right thing, want to do the right thing, and give me like the energy and the strength to get up every day, go into the legislature, travel around the province and advocate for those things. And then how I got into politics, I've always been interested in politics, but I've really always been interested in food. I grew up on a farm, and it was we raised grain crops and cattle. I started one of Ontario's first organic food delivery businesses in 1995, right here in Guelph. I've started a small food production business that focused on supporting local sustainable farmers. was the co-founder with Lori Stahlbrand of Local Food Plus, which is how I met Suman. And that organization's primary objective was to get local sustainable food into universities and schools and hospitals, long-term care homes, restaurants, retail stores, and had a very successful run at doing that. I've been a part of organizations like Farm Start to help young farmers get started and be able to access land. I've been a part of starting a number of farmers markets over the years. And so I'm incredibly passionate about food. And people said to me in around 2009 that you should start getting involved in politics. And so and change policy. And so and I felt like the Green Party was the party that most represented my values. And at that time, there were no Greens elected anywhere in Ontario or across Canada, actually. No Green and Elizabeth May had been elected yet. And I thought, okay, all this entrepreneurial experience I've had starting businesses, starting nonprofit organizations, I'm going to apply to see if we can build a new political party and a political movement to make things better in Ontario and across Canada.
First of all, you're a living, breathing example of one person being able to do something monumental, right? If people are feeling disenfranchised, this is the kind of stuff where I get bogged down by the weight of the problems that we're trying to talk about and solve and deal with. And here's a guy who grew up in an environment. First of all, we already know that food is political, so it's not that big of a journey from farming to politics. But you started out doing one thing, and then you were like, you know what? Why can't I scale this up? Why can't I scale up my enthusiasm and my ideas and go for something bigger and change policy instead of just doing things, or in addition to doing things on a local level? And I think that's a huge takeaway for people. Right. Do you have to run for office? No, but I think people are far more skilled than they think they are. And those skills can be applied in lots of different ways. And sometimes it means that you can show up in the Ontario legislature and change policy. And I think that's amazing. And I think it's important for people to hear that.
Well, thanks for that. But the point you made, Stacey, that I think has to be emphasized, you don't have to run for elected office to be engaged in politics or to be engaged in improving your community. Everybody who's like starting a business to change the world, or a nonprofit organization, or organizing rallies like the big rallies that happened this past weekend across Canada. People who are volunteering. There's just so many different ways in which you can make a difference. I think everyone has a role to play. My role just happens to be right now as a member of provincial parliament. But I can guarantee you, I wouldn't be in this position if it weren't for thousands of volunteers and people who have supported me on this journey and helped me get to this place. And so it takes a whole community, a whole province, a whole movement to make the kind of change that I think we're talking about in addressing food security and hunger in this province and across this country.
Absolutely. And all levels of commitment and participation are needed in order to do that.
100%. So, Mike, let's just imagine a situation that a current premier walks up to you and says, Mike, give me one policy that is really you're passionate about, that I can back and get it approved. You talked about a few different ones, including social assistance, minimum wage, housing. What is that one policy that you would say, okay, this is what I want to get approved in this term?
Fixing the housing crisis has to be number one, because that's what's driving the affordability crisis. If we got back into building deeply affordable homes for people, then the math for social assistance still wouldn't add up. So we're still going to have to double social assistance rates, but it would certainly help. Minimum wage workers could actually afford to pay the rent and be able to buy food. So I think until we fix this housing crisis, I mean, when you have people sometimes spending like 80% of their income on housing, there just isn't money left over for things like food.
How do we get the youth involved in food insecurity? How do you catalyze the youth?
Well, so first of all, I would say empower youth to be change makers and decision makers in our communities. I'm really proud in Guelph. the largest voter demographic turnout in the provincial election earlier this year in Guelph were voters between the age of 18 and 25. 68% of the voters in Guelph were between 18 and 25, higher than even 65 plus, 55 to 65, which tend to be higher turnout demographics. And so to me, that shows that young people, if you give them a reason to be engaged in politics, will come out and be involved in politics. And I can't tell you how many young people were in leadership roles in my campaign. And so I think young people are hungry. They are hungry for a positive, hopeful vision, and a vision that they can be a part of shaping. It's not like, oh, let's tell young people what to do and how they should get involved. No, let's empower young people. Let's put young people in decision-making roles. This is what I was so excited. I was at the World Food Forum launch in Toronto that I know, Suman, you can tell us all about much more than I can, because you're, involved. You're the person who's inspired the first North American UN chapter. But it was all those young people you had empowered and were there speaking and organizing and putting forward their vision of how we address food issues in Canada. Like, that's how you get young people involved, is you give them the space, the place, and the power to be able to make decisions and be involved.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's kind of a new world order with that demographic, because they have technology on their side in a way that's never been truer than now. And they're really coming up with a lot of innovation about how to clean up the water and fix supply chain issues and things like that. And it's because they have grown up realizing that this is a problem that needs to be fixed, and the people above them haven't been able to solve it thus far. And so they're now turning to technology and other tools that maybe weren't available certainly to the baby boomers, and even to my generation, right? I mean, my first computer was a Commodore 64. It had a crank on the side of it, basically. And now you can, launch a rocket from your iPhone. So like, things have changed, and that demographic is the one that's going to be leading the charge. And the other thing I want to say about what you just said is, we've interviewed quite a few people who are doing stuff in Guelph, and Guelph has got it going on. I don't know if it's in the water. I don't know what is going on in Guelph. Water. It must be. And good, healthy food, and a lot of people engaged in their community, and the stuff that's coming out of the University of Guelph. I mean, really, it is a real hub of innovation and progress.
It really is. Can I give you two stories to that? So first of all, John Sleeman, Sleeman's Brewery, yes, right? They're one of the big breweries. They selected Guelph because they went all over Ontario and said Guelph had the best water. So we better protect this water in Guelph. We're the largest city in Canada that still solely relies on groundwater for our drinking water. So we care deeply about our water in this community. And second of all, I want to tell you a story about two young women who started a company called Friendlier when they were in university, and they're still in their 20s now, and it's grown into a multi-million-dollar company to reduce plastic waste. So if you're out and about and you see these blue plastic reusable containers that you can return, and you can like purchase something in them at a restaurant or a food grocery store or whatever, and pay a deposit and put your stuff in it, and then come back and get a different one and return the other one, they're reducing thousands and thousands of pounds of plastic pollution. And they're making a living doing it. And they've created, I don't know, it was like last time I looked at their little washing plant in the south end of Guelph, like they've got like 50, 60 people working for them, and just two young women in their mid-20s. It's amazing.
This generation is going to save us all. I know they are. I feel it in my bones.
But you know what? You say that, but I think our generation, or at least my generation, don't want to age either one of you, we have an obligation to make sure we don't make it too hard for them. And right now we are making it hard for them. It's like almost impossible for young people to even dream of owning a home. Yeah. 100%. Youth unemployment is at recession levels right now. The climate crisis is bearing down on young people. We have a responsibility to make sure we don't make it too hard on them.
Am I lucky to work with this gentleman for over 2 decades?
I'll tell you what, He is a spitfire, that guy. And I mean, we have way more to talk to him about. So we're just cutting it off for the sake of parsing
Time.
this out into 2 different episodes. But honestly, like, I think his message transcends politics. I think the stuff that he's talking about, if you're put off by the fact that he's a member of the Green Party for whatever reason, don't be, because what he's talking about is universal.
It is. It is not about the party he
At
represents.
all.
It is about being human.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. Anybody with common sense who wants to care
Yeah.
and want to make world a different place,
Yeah.
our province a different place,
Yeah.
our country is a different place,
Yeah.
need to listen to him.
Yeah. He's a farmer who became a politician.
Oh, hold on. He's a farmer who became an advocate for local food
Yeah.
in institutions,
Yes.
then became a politician.
Yeah.
So it's amazing
Yeah.
that he's able to do it from a place called Guelph.
Yeah.
Those who don't know the Canadian geography, Guelph is a very farm community.
Yes, it's a very agricultural.
And
but I mean that
a lot of innovation.
Yeah, and that really changes the term of, sort of farm to table, right? I mean, he went from the field to the legislature
and actually holding the government, the oppositions, and everybody else
accountable. Yeah.
So
look forward
don't go anywhere.
Conversations
Next week we'll be back with another episode and continue this conversation with the Green Party leader of Ontario, Mr. Mike Schreiner.
Yeah.
Till then, please subscribe, follow us. If you haven't picked up your book, The Zero Hunger Project, please do so. And we will be back next week for the second part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go anywhere.